All right, welcome to lesson 105, using proportions to solve percent problems. This lesson starts on page 548, so make sure you have your textbook ready. We'll get started with our mental math. So follow along as we do the mental math, and then pause if you need more time between questions and answers. So for letter A, we have 200 times 40. What is 200 times 40? The answer is 8,000. Letter B, 567 minus 150. What is 567 minus 150? The answer is 417. Letter C, what is 50% of 200? 50% of 200 is 100. Letter D, $17.20 plus $2.99. $17.20 plus $2.99. The answer is $20.19. Letter E, 7.5 or 7 5/10 divided by 100. What is 7.5 divided by 100? The answer is 0.075. 0.075. Letter F, 440 divided by 20. What is 440 divided by 20? The answer is 22. Letter G, how many quarts are in 2 gallons? How many quarts would there be in 2 gallons? The answer to that is 8 quarts. Right, so there's 4 quarts in 1 gallon, so 4 quarts times 2 gallons equals 8 quarts. And finally, our calculation. We have 6 times 8 plus 1, find the square root, times 3 minus 1 divided by 2 times 10 minus 1 divided by 9. And the answer to our calculation is 11. All right, so we're going to get started with using proportions to solve ratios. So what we're going to do today is we're going to solve percent problems by creating a ratio box, setting up a proportion and solving the proportion. So hopefully you remember these ratio boxes from a couple lessons back. And so remember that a percent can be expressed as a fraction with a denominator of 100. So I have that note written across the top here to remember. So for example, 30% could be 30 over 100. So keeping that knowledge in mind will help us as we go into our ratio boxes. We're going to look at them with percents now instead of ratio. If you'll recall, this left column when we were doing these before would say ratio. So just another example, 6% is 6 over 100. 80% is 80 over 100. Just keep those facts in mind. Any percent can be written as a fraction with a denominator of 100. So our first question here, 30% of the cars in the parade are antique cars. If 12 vehicles, let me underline some facts. If 12 vehicles are antique cars, how many vehicles are in the parade in all? So what we're looking at with this first question, we're looking at a parade. So we're looking at antiques. We're looking at cars that are not antique. And then we're looking at the total. So right now what we know first is we know 30% of the cars are antique. So in the percent column, I'm going to use, sorry, hope you can hear me over that motorcycle. In the antique row rather, I'm going to put 30%. And then our total, of course, our total percent is 100. The other thing I know is the actual count of antique cars. I also know that there are 12 cars in all. And then what we're looking for is the total. So let's fill in the things that we can fill in and then use the variables for the rest. So 30% plus some percent is 100. So we know that the cars that are not antique make up 70% of the parade. All right, and we can say that because 30% plus 70% is 100%. Now, just yet, we don't know how many cars are not antique, and we don't know how many cars there are total. But what we're going to look at here is a way to figure that out. All right, so remember, when we try to set up our proportion, what we're going to do is we're going to use the row that is completely filled out, and then we're going to use the row that helps us find the answer we're looking for. This says how many vehicles are in the parade in all, so we're going to look at our actual total. So remember, what you do is you take those two rows out and you set up your proportion. So we're going to use 30, because that's here, over 100 from the other row we're looking for, equals 12 as our numerator over t, because that's the other part of the proportion we're trying to solve. So remember, in order to solve proportions, we're going to cross multiply, and just to make this a little easier, let's reduce our fraction first. So 30 over 100, let's make it 3 over 10. All right, and then we will cross multiply. So 3 times t is 3t equals 10 times 12, or 120. Okay, and then what we need to do is we need to solve for t. So remember, when you have an unknown factor, divide your product by your known factor. So that means t equals 40. So there are 40 vehicles total. All right, so it's just like what we did with our ratio boxes, but now we're using percents as well. Let's look at another example. Only 40% of the team members played in the game. If 24 team members did not play, how many did play? Okay, so we have our ratio box here. We have percent and actual count. Then on our columns on the side, we're going to have players that played, team members that did not play, and then of course we're going to have our total. So let's fill out what we know. We know 40% played in the game, 40% out of 100% total. It says 24 did not play, so 24 is going to go in the actual count and is going to go in the did not play row. And then how many did play is what we're looking for. So we want to find this missing information, which we'll say is the letter P. We'll say the actual total is T, and then the percent that did not play would have to be 60%, because remember, the total needs to equal 100. Okay, so how do we set up our proportion? We look at the row that has the information we need, and then we look at the row that has complete information. So we're going to look at our second row here because it has 60 and 24 filled out. So let's pull out that information and turn it into a proportion. So we're just going to honestly put fraction bars here. 40 over 60 equals P over 24. Now before we cross multiply, I think we should reduce. So 40 over 60 can become 2 over 3. Then we cross multiply, so 2 times 24 equals 3 times P. Okay, to solve for P, we would divide by 3 because that would help us solve it. And then we would find out that the number of people who did play was 16. So 16 team members did play in the game. All right. So your steps for this type of problem would be to make a percent box or a ratio box with percents, fill in the given information, find out what information you can, and then solve the proportion. All right, we're going to look at one more example. Example 3. Buying the shoes on sale, Nathan paid $45.60, which was 60% of the full price. What was the full price of the shoes? Okay, so we know how much he paid. We can gather how much he saved. And then we can look at the total price. So let's fill in what we know. We know that he actually paid $45.60. We also know that what he paid was 60% of the full price. And we know the total of the full price would be 100%. So if he paid 60%, that means he saved 40%. And the rest of the information we don't know. We don't know how much he saved in actual dollars, and we don't know how much he paid. What the original total was, rather. So we're trying to find the original full price of the shoes. So let's look at this. What rows are we going to use to help us find the information? Remember, we'll use the row that is complete, and we'll use the row that includes our missing information that we need. We need to know the full price. So let's set up our proportion. 60 over 100 equals $45.60 over our total. Okay, so before we do this, I'm going to reduce. So 6 over 10, and that can also reduce to 3 over 5. All right, so remember what our next step here is to cross multiply. So we have 3t, and if you're following along in your book as we go, you'll notice they do these problems without reducing their first ratio. That's fine as well. All right, so then we have 5 times 45, 60, and that's going to be $228. Okay, next we have to figure out what would that price be originally. So we'll divide by our known factor, which is 3, and we find that the original total price was $76. Okay, so make your ratio box, fill in the information, find what you need to find in order to set up your proportion, and then cross multiply to solve your proportion. Okay, so let's get some practice with this. We are going to look at our practice set on page 550, and we're just going to do A through D, because E, you have to create your own problem, and I can't really check that. So you're welcome to do that as practice, but otherwise, why don't you just work on A through D for now. So take a few minutes and work out those 4 problems, and then we will go over them together. Okay, so for letter A, it says 40% of the cameras in a store are digital cameras. If 24 cameras are not digital, how many are in the store in all? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the answers, and if you got them right, move on to your homework. If you didn't, keep listening and I'll go over how we got those answers. So letter A, the answer is 40 cameras. All right. Letter B, 70% of the team members played in the game. If 21 team members played, how many did not play? And the answer is 9 team members. Letter C, referring to problem B, what proportion would we use to find the number of members on the team? So that's a different part of the question if we wanted to know the total number. So we would have used the percent information and the total information. So we would have set up a proportion like this. Letter D, Joan walked 0.6 miles in 10 minutes. How far can she walk in 25 minutes at that rate? All right, so that's a really good question. Write and solve a proportion. So this one I'll just go over right away. If she can walk 0.6 miles per 10 minutes, how far can she walk in 25 minutes? So that's sort of the proportion you would fill out without even having to do a percent box or a ratio box. And you would find that the distance she could walk is 1.5 miles. So to solve that, just cross multiply and solve. Okay, so if you're all done, please move on to your homework. It's on page 551. The problems are listed right here if you want to write those down while I go over the next few problems. So for letter A, let's set up a quick ratio box. So we have the percent. This might be too small. I bet it will be. Let me make another one. All right, percent actual count. So we're looking at digital cameras. We're looking at cameras that are not digital. And as always, we are looking at the total. So the problem reads 40% of the cameras in the store are digital. So 40% are digital. That means 60% are not digital, which of course is 100%. We always want our total to equal 100%. If 24 cameras are not digital, so that would go to my actual count, how many cameras are in the store in all? So we want to know the total. I'm not even going to fill up, I will. So that means we're going to use this column because it's filled out, and this, I keep saying column instead of row, and this row because it contains the information we need. So bring those numbers out into a proportion and cross multiply to solve. So we would say 100 times 24 equals 60 times t. How do we solve for t? We would divide by 60. And that would give us the answer, which was 40 cameras. All right, so make your percent, make your ratio box, fill in what they give you, and then use the rows you need to find the information they ask for. So I'm going to do this again for letter B. So take a second to write these down, or pause the video because I'm about to erase it. All right, we're going to look at problem B. And I sort of like working it this way, where you just draw your ratio box right away, and then you can fill it out as you read. So percent, I don't know why I give percent so much space. Percent and actual count. So here what we're looking at team members who played, team members who did not play, and the total. So let's read and fill out the box as we go. 70% of the team members played. 70% played. That means 30 did not. 100 total. If 21 team members played, they gave us that number. How many team members did not play? So we're looking for how many did not play. Did not play. So use the row that has complete information, and then use the row that has the information you need. So in this case, our proportion is 70 over 30 equals 21 over D. Okay? So we're going to cross multiply 70 times D equals 21 times 3. Okay, to find how many did not play, we would divide each side by 70, and we would get 9. That was sort of a fast version. And it's from this ratio box that we got the answer to letter C. Because C said, what if we had wanted to know the total number of players? They say, what if we wanted to know that instead? Then we would have looked at this row. All right, notice that's the same proportion. Okay, so I hope that made sense to you. It's just the same sort of problems, ratio boxes, except for now you're using percents instead of ratios. So make sure you get your homework done. Let me know if you have any questions. And then we have our Zoom conference. I think we're just going to keep those on Thursdays, if that works for everyone. If you have a question, if you want me to have a personal Zoom conference with you to go over problems, let me know and we can schedule that. All right? All right, so I hope you guys are continuing to do well, and please reach out to me if you need help with anything at all. I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. And until then, have a great day.